Hey, insurance agents, do you find yourself struggling to hit the number of calls that you need to make every day? Or maybe you're making calls and you're getting some objections like, call me back, it's way too early, and you don't know what to do. If so, stay tuned. I'm gonna answer all those questions and more. If you're new to this channel, this is our special series that we are calling Diary of a New Producer. We're giving you a look behind the curtain into the life of a new producer. His name's Ian Cognito. He's now been with us about 6 months. I'm his mentor. And I'm your host here. My name is Micah. This is the Max Revenue Show. Our goal is simple: to help growth-minded producers sell more insurance. Hey, before I get into this week's content, do us a huge favor. If you like our stuff, give it a thumbs up. Let people know about it in the comments, and be sure to subscribe. All right, so week 23, here we go. Ian and I met. We had a great conversation this week, and there's 3 things that we discussed I'm going to get into today. The first thing that we talked about was how to make a little kind of trick to help you hit your calling activity. The second thing we discussed was the objection of call me back later. It's too early right now. And the third thing that we'll talk about in this video is when a phrase that you can say that will help you kind of weed out the tire kickers and essentially the people who aren't the true decision makers. So stay tuned for that. It's going to come at the end. All right, so the first thing is, you know, Ian's goal is 40 calls a day, which comes out to about 200 calls per week. How did he get this goal? Quite simply, it's just what I used, right? It worked really, really well for me in my career. I still try to follow it. And I just found out that based on the number of calls I need to make, it's gonna lead to a certain amount of conversations, usually about 1 in 5, or 1 in 10 calls leads to a conversation, and about 1 in 5 conversations leads to a meeting. And so the numbers work out. Well, a lot of times when Ian sends me his weekly call reports, they come in and he's usually making about 150, you know, somewhere in the 140 to 150 space, which isn't bad. And I tell him, you know, 200 is a goal, of course. Doesn't mean you're going to hit it every week, but that should be something you could strive for, and it's very achievable without burning yourself out. So the prior week, I told him, I said, hey man, I know you're a big tech guy. You don't like paper. Do me a favor though. This next week, get a little bit old school, take out a pen and paper like I told you week 1, and make little tally marks, right? Every time you make a call, you make a tally mark. Every time you have a conversation, a tally mark. You get a yes, you get a no, you get a follow-up later. Keep your scorecard after every call. I don't know what it does, but there's something in my mind, and I've seen it work for others. It was the way I was taught, that there's something about checking make a little physical mark on a piece of paper that actually, it's like a dopamine hit for the brain, I think, but it forces you to kind of strive to hit that number. And so lo and behold, this week, I was interested to see where Ian's numbers came in because he said he was going to make these tallies. He made the tallies, and guess what, guys? He came in at 195, just 5 short of the goal of 200 and well above his kind of average, I would say, of 150. So I suck at math, but he obviously made a 45 call increase, which is what, 5-6 more conversations a week, maybe an extra meeting. So I just want to share that with you. I know I've shared it in other videos, but it's one of the most easiest and simplest things that you can do, I think, to stay on track and to hit the numbers that you want to achieve from an activity standpoint. All right, second thing is, you know, he's been calling, right now it's the month of April, or I'm sorry, it's the month of January, about to be over. And he's been calling April's, kind of phasing them out, working into his May calls, you know, and I said, you know, in a perfect world, really, you'd be calling, as of February 1st, you'd be calling June's, right? But it's tough after that holiday season, right? A lot of people put you off. So I don't hold that against him. I'm in the same trap and boat myself. I'm just calling May's. I should really be calling June's right now, primarily. But that's kind of besides the point. So the issue is he's calling these people, and let's just say they're May 1st, and it's February 1st for simple math. And they're saying, hey, it's just too far out. We're not going to quote or even look at the insurance or talk with people until April 1st, right? We all get this objection a lot. So you got to get really good at handling it. There's a couple different things you can do here. One is you could try like a accusation audit, something like a Chris Voss would say. It can come across, you got to really be careful with how you say it. It can come across very condescending if you don't say it correctly. But let's just say they say, hey, call us back 30 days prior. We're just too busy. You could say something, you know, be like, hey, it sounds to me like you guys never really struggle with late renewals. That's not much of a problem. And that's why you kind of prefer to deal with the insurance maybe just 30 days out. So that's kind of a reverse, or that's an accusation audit. You can see what I did there. you know, I don't mind it. You just have to be very careful with the tonality, and it can work depending on the person you're talking to. I've tried it. It can work okay, right? And so that's just a version of it. What I like better is to kind of reverse engineer with the prospect real quick. So if they say, hey, yep, call me back April 1st, we renew May 1st, and we'll talk then. You can say, hey, John, I'd be happy to do that, but can I ask just a quick question? You know, when would you prefer to actually, if you got quotes from another agent or looked at other options, when would you actually want to make that decision by and look at all options by? 99% of the time, they will respond with something of like, hey, I want to see it like 3 weeks out. We don't want to make last minute decisions. So you see what I did there? I didn't have to force that on them or shove it down their throat. I just brought that up. Now, when they say that, you say, okay, that's kind of what I figured. So let me just kind of walk backwards a little bit with you if I can have a sec. You want to see it 3 weeks prior. Well, usually as an agent, we need to get our quote in the door a week prior to that, at least 5 days, just so we have time to go back and forth with the underwriters, check it, make sure the coverage is accurate. Well, then a week prior to that, so now we're 4 weeks out from the renewal date, the underwriters need at least 30 days, typically to get to do their best work. I like to say 45, depending on your size of your account, complexity. But again, for simple math, we'll say 45. So that puts us about, so now April 1st and then back 45 days from that is really February, mid-February. And then, John, typically what I found is that once we meet and it takes you time to get information from your agent, right? Application, some paperwork, some loss runs, add maybe another week or two on there. So I know that it sounds like you're extremely busy today. I'm not asking you to set a meeting next week, but I would highly encourage you, if you're serious about taking a look at things, that could we schedule a time maybe 2 weeks from now? How does that week look, right? So you get where I'm going here. This is the kind of conversation you got to be willing to have, and you got to push back a little bit on this, because you will get this objection a lot if you're actually calling early like you should be, like 4 months out, 5 months out. You're going to get this objection. Even if you're calling 60 days out, which you shouldn't really be doing at that point, but if you are, you got to be able to combat this. All right. So I promised you one last tip, and this is the third thing we talked about, how to kind of weed out the tire kickers, or really the fake decision makers. And this, I give all the credit to Justin Michael. If you haven't followed him on LinkedIn, go check him out. He's great stuff. He's a sales coach. He's got a lot of high energy, a lot of unique takes. I adapted a big chunk of my cold call script from his methodology. But his opening, I think, is so great. So when you get someone on the phone, and this is what you got to say, and don't say, hey, do you handle, or who handles the insurance? I know that feels maybe a little bit more comfortable, but you guys use a little bit more of a stronger word that gets people off the fence. And so what he recommends saying is, are you in charge of the insurance? Or if you don't know the name, who's in charge of the insurance? Something interesting happens here. I've been using this line for the last probably 6-7 months. And when you get transferred to someone, let's say they think they're in charge of their insurance, that's who you get transferred to, maybe the controller or an office manager, and you say that, hey, Susie passed me to you, she said that you're in charge of the insurance, is that right? This is what's going to happen, guys. Well, I'm not really in charge. I handle it, but John, the owner, really ultimately makes the full decision, right? So you see what happened there, right? You basically got the answer you really wanted to know without asking them, or making things awkward and be like, hey, who else handles this or is involved? You don't even got to go down that path. If you open up this way, most people will tell you honestly if they're actually in charge, like the person that signs off makes a decision or not. Now, even if it's not, doesn't mean you have to just walk away. You can still meet with that person. It's not a wasted attempt. But I think this is just a really, really good line to implement. And Ian and I talked about using this, whether, again, you're calling, you get the decision maker, you know they're the owner, or you get a receptionist and you're trying to figure out who's in charge of. So start using that language and then confirming it once you get that person on the phone. You'll see a lot of good things coming from this. So, hey, what are your thoughts, guys? Let me know what's your top objection you're getting in the comments. We'll try to do maybe another video on that. And if you haven't, give this a thumbs up, subscribe, check us out on LinkedIn, check us out on our podcast, check out our newsletter and our brand new school community. We hate that word community, but that's just the best word we got for it. It's just a group of producers who get together, collaborate, and help one another out. So good luck out there. We'll talk soon.